Welcome back to Zero Missing. Thank you guys so much for being here. Today's story is pretty graphic. If you're sensitive to some things, this might be a video to have a little bit of discretion with. It's about a cannibal who got caught, murdered somebody, and then got caught. They know about it, and they still let him go. He still walks around today. We'll tell you all about it in just a second. Today's story is about a cannibal who not only murdered and raped his victim, he also dismembered her and tried to hide her body in a lake. This guy still walks around today, and we're going to get into all of the fine tunings of the whole story. Issei Sagawa really caused quite a stir in Paris in the summer of 1981. Renee Hartevelt was a woman he had befriended at a local college. He invites her over to dinner, and his plan was to take a rifle and actually shoot her in the neck. Unfortunately, the gun misfired. We don't know if she didn't hear it or he made a joke out of it. We're not sure, but what we do know is that he was actually able to get her to come over a second night, and she came over the next night, and at that point the weapon did not misfire. At that point, Issei says that he fainted, said that he came to, and he actually thought about calling an ambulance, but he said that since he's been fantasizing about eating flesh since he was 6 years old, he thought, hang on, don't be stupid, you've been dreaming about this for 32 years and now it's actually happening. He then tries to take a bite out of her with just his teeth, only to realize that that's not strong enough. So he decides he's going to leave and go buy a butcher knife. So this entire time that he's just shot and killed this woman, he's been apparently out cold for some undisclosed period of time, and now feels complete leisure to just go to a local store and buy a butcher knife and come back and do what he wanted to do. It's a pretty fantastic story, considering that no one, I guess, called the law. There was no law come knocking on the door from the rifle shot inside the city of Paris, which had to be really weird. Now, from here the story gets a little weirder. It doesn't say whether he raped her first or raped her after or during, but we're pretty sure it was initially he tried to eat some of her and then rape her, which is really insane just to begin with. So he ended up cutting off parts of her breasts, her calves, her lips, and her thighs. And over the next couple of days, he consumes quite a bit of her. He believed that he could absorb her powers through eating her. Now, we're not sure what caused this way of thinking. He was 4'9", she was 5'11", so it seems like there might have been some kind of complex there to his size and height. He was also apparently born premature, had some defects along the way. Now, back to his fiasco with Renee. After a couple of days, the body starts to decay, and he really starts to figure out at this point, well, this adventure can't continue on the way it's going, so I've got to do something with the remains. His plan is to dismember her body, put it into 2 large suitcases, call a taxi, and then take it to a local lake and dispose of her body there. And in the process of doing this, he actually has a conversation while the cabbie is trying to help him load up the cases. The cabbie jokingly says, "You don't have a couple of dead bodies in here, do you?" And that's actually what he did. So now you have a completely unknowing person who has in part been a part of this whole thing, and unknowingly. They do end up finding out later, and the taxi driver helps them find this guy. The whole thing kind of comes to an end whenever he is trying to carry the 2 suitcases to the water. Some people saw him carry it, noticed that it was dripping blood, and then called the police. So the police catch him essentially red-handed. There are some reports he was caught at the lake. There's some reports that say that they found out from the cab driver where they picked him up from and went back and got him from his own apartment. So there's a little bit of conflicting information there, but the things that are very clear and accurate are the suitcase, the lake, the remains were found. They actually found her ID card on her, at which point after they found out who he was arrested and held for 2 years without trial. A judge finally ended up convicting him, declaring him insane, and he was committed to a full mental institution, a max security institution, but still. And while he was there, he actually wrote a novel called The Fog. It was, I believe it ended up being a #1 bestseller, and a lot of people believe that the stories that he told in the book were real account cases of him doing all these horrible crimes. The story is about a man who murders a woman, rapes her corpse, eats pieces of her flesh, which would obviously point to, that way of thinking. After several years, he was extradited to Japan. But Paris, especially France, France has a very strange law that says if a person is declared insane, all of their records are sealed. So even though he was extradited to Japan, they couldn't prosecute him. So even though there were judges in Japan that deemed him completely sane, mentally fit enough to stand trial, but because the records were sealed, they essentially had no evidence. So they ended up actually having to let him go. He checked himself out of a mental hospital and walked away completely free. There has been so many things that have happened in pop culture that actually have touched on this. It was kind of strange for me to read about this and didn't know that this was part of some of this stuff. One of them being is that Rolling Stones actually made a song called Too Much Blood, and it kind of recounts the case of Issei Sagawa's murder of Renee Hartzfeld. So I was very surprised to hear that. Now, since he has been, I guess you would say, free, he's actually become a food critic over the years, and he's wrote numerous books. He's a bit of a celebrity in Japan. And he says his desire to eat people becomes so intense around June when people start wearing less clothes, and when women start wearing less clothes and showing more skin. He said that in an interview. He also said, "Today I saw a girl with a really nice derriere on my way to the train station. When I see things like that, I think about wanting to eat someone again before I die." I've had several there have been several documentaries made about him, and it just in several movies actually. It's unbelievable that the guy that we know we know that this guy murdered a woman, mutilated her, cannibalized her, and raped her, and dismembered her, and tried to dispose of the body in the lake, caught red-handed, and he walks away free. He's still free to this day, 72 years old, living in Tokyo with his brother after having a stroke in 2013. He has since changed his name, and there's no real way to know what it is now, but the fact remains is that there's still a free man walking around who is an admitted cannibal. Just never know who you're talking to at the grocery store, I guess. Wow, what an incredible story. Well, we really appreciate you guys being on here. You don't have to like, you don't have to subscribe, but if you want to, you can. See you guys soon.